Welcome to the Think Differently and Deeply podcast series. My name is Glenn Whitman, and I'm the Dreyfus Family Director of the Center for Transformative Teaching and Learning at St. Andrew's Episcopal School. The CTTL's vision is a world in which every teacher understands how every student's brain learns. Not only does the CTTL support 100% of St. Andrew's preschool through 12th grade teachers and school leaders toward that vision, but we globally share promising research and strategies in the science of teaching and learning through workshops, digital tools, and publications like Think Differently and Deeply. This season of the Think Differently and Deeply podcast will connect you with the exceptional teachers, school leaders, students, and researchers who authored articles for Volume 5 of Think Differently and Deeply. Today, I'm delighted to welcome my colleague, Sara McAuliffe, to our Think Differently and Deeply podcast studio. Sara wears many hats at St. Andrews as a passionate middle school English teacher and co-leader of our 2-year new employee orientation program. During this podcast, we will discuss Sara's article, You Have Something in Your Teeth, My Journey to Being a Research-Informed Teacher. Welcome, Sara, to the CTTL podcast studio.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
Yeah, and in full transparency, we're having you back, right? Because we, a little while ago, we did this, and the recording, just the technology didn't do what we wanted it to do. So
Technology often does.
it is. So hopefully we'll get it as good the second time. But really great to have you. We are moments or hours from spring break.
Yes.
I think we're like 48 hours. How you feeling?
Definitely feeling excited, just as the students are. And then that anticipation is leading to a little bit of, I would say, the whoozy-whatsies that are going on in the head of the students and also probably most of our colleagues.
Yeah, no, it's like, how do you end strong? Right when we all are, looking forward to some sleep, some rest, some disconnection before the final push to the year. Why do you love teaching English? Because I know you do. I see it when I walk by your classroom, but I know you really get a lot of passion and joy out of it.
I do, definitely. And I think one of the things about English in particular is that while we're talking about the book in front of us or the short story or the poem, what we're really talking about is the experience of life and looking at something from different perspectives, whether that's a perspective that you never thought you'd encounter or trying on something that you've been wrestling with yourself. So we often talk about how the English curriculum is really about building empathy and building those mirrors and windows for students, and also hoping that they see themselves reflected and making sure that they see themselves reflected in the curriculum as well.
And you have taught simultaneously middle school students and upper school students, right? Which they're not always the same. How do you think about those two groups when you walk into, let's say, a B block at St. Andrews, let's say it's a middle school class, and then a couple hours later you're in a G block upper school class?
Yeah, so on a couple of the days, it is nice where I'm singularly focused. I have middle school just this day or high school just this day. But more often than not, it is that split mentality throughout the day. And at the beginning of the year, and for context, I teach 8th and 9th grade. So a little bit of that bridge. At the beginning of the year, they're super different because that growth that happens over the 8th grade year and into that 9th grade summer is magnificent.
Sure, yeah.
And I think about the scaffolding. So scaffolding everything from, expectations in class as far as with student skills. What do I need to say? Show me that you're ready by, or I should see those sorts of explicit instructions. And then not often, especially in certain days leading up to spring break might be one of them where I can use those in my high school class too, because they do need those reminders and everybody's constantly growing. But definitely thinking about the scaffold and where we're going and how much guidance or intervention and how much struggle I can leave for each of those grades.
And I'm sure, we're in the month of, we're in March, heading to April, right? In certain areas, some of those scaffolds for some students have come down and they can maybe struggle more. And some you put on new scaffolds as you maybe introduce your final topics or thinkings for the rest of the year. This was your first publication for Think Differently and Deeply. You spend a lot of time with your English colleagues teaching students how to become better writers. I really have always thought we hear back from our alums at St. Andrews that they leave here knowing how to write. And the English department, the history department, every department where there's writing, which is every department, takes credit for that. But what was it like for you now to be asked to write 11 to 1200 word Malcolm Gladwell-esque research informed?
Well, I would say it was exciting, and it was a good reminder of what our students go through when it comes to writer's block or when it comes to topic creation or things along those lines, because I was encouraged, I'll say, to contribute, and I wanted to, but what had prevented me in previous years was that I wasn't totally sure what I had to say. And I think that's an experience that every writer has, whether they are our 6th grader coming in and being asked to talk about this poem that they're reading for the first time, or our seniors when they do our seniors last stand. Thinking about what do I have to say was interesting, and it was an opportunity to reflect on my own practice in that way.
No, and good modeling too. And I appreciate you say you sort of were encouraged by, I don't know if it was me or Ian to write, but that there was no sort of like arm bending or yes, got it. I appreciate it. You'll be encouraged again. I love your piece, and one of the things I love so much about your piece is you might have the most catchy title in this volume of Think Differently and Deeply. And the title, just to remind you, if you don't have a printed or digital copy yet, is "You Have Something in Your Teeth, My Journey to Being a Researched Informed Teacher." So I just gotta have to ask, because I'm not too sure if I know the story. How did you come up with that title?
So I was I was kind of torn between a couple of titles. I always tell my students write the title last, and that's what I did. So I'd written the entirety of the piece first and had a couple of different analogies in there that I was swapping in and out. And one was kind of about keys, and the other one was about this idea of something in your teeth. And that's the one that really stuck with me because when I sort of found this idea, or not idea, but the practice of research informed education and MBE, I felt like embarrassed a little bit that I'd been teaching for a couple of years and really didn't know where to go to find research informed educational practices, but also that there was a whole host of individuals out there doing this, and I wasn't yet one of them. So that sense of embarrassment was where I wanted to go with that, and this idea that there is something out there, but you just don't know it yet. And so that kind of the mentality of keep searching, keep checking, keep going back to that mirror to extend my metaphor a little bit further.
Yeah, no, I think it's important that you acknowledge. Well, first of all, how many years have you been teaching?
I was thinking about this on the way in today. It's like I don't think I got the number right on our first recording. So I get the do-over. I get the do-over. So I have been teaching for 9 years, explicit teaching, but I've been in the education world for around 11.
Right. So earlyish mid-career point of education. And I loved where we talked about that teaching or thinking about your practice is highly personal. And somewhat challenging, right? I mean, you model so well in this story about how you were thinking differently because you read This Is Self-Serving Neuroteach. Appreciate you giving a shout out to the book Ian and I wrote. But let's talk about this issue of the highly personal nature of thinking about your craft. And actually, you went one step further, which you actually changed your practice. So, what makes learning and growing as an educator so personal and so hard actually to maybe actually do things differently? Lots of questions in there. So,
Lots of
just
questions.
pick one of three.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that makes it so personal is that we can become really tied to our day to day. And when I say the we, I mean the teachers in the room. And we can be very tied to what is it that I teach and not what am I, what am I showing them how to learn. But I would say the thing that makes it highly personal is the connection to what you teach. And it can feel as if it's a part of you. And especially I would say in the English world, we're teaching them how to see themselves and others and how to deal with conflict and how to have big feelings and also how to critically think. And so if what we're doing isn't working, it can be really personally connected back to am I failing? As opposed to what are the strategies that I'm using that aren't yet getting these kids to where we want them to be as learners, and what can I teach them so that they can learn better?
Right. And I love how you, in your piece, you chunk out your sort of first 9 years in education. sort of your pre-MBE period and your post-MBE period. I really like how you
Not
did that.
post, Glenn,
Not, but
not
it's not
post.
post, but it's not post, right? Because now it's forever, right?
Yes.
But let's talk about it. There's a great Project Zero thinking routine. I used to think, but now I think. I know I think people in the English department use it, and certainly we love some of the Project Zero thinking routine stuff. They're not a sponsor yet of the Think Differently TV podcast, but if anybody's listening from Project Zero, that little shout out for you. Talk about what you're doing differently, either thinking or actually doing differently since you've been exposed to some of the researchers you mentioned. I mean, you mentioned Pooja and Pedro and Whitman and Kelleher and Patrice. What did you do maybe early in your career? And then what does it look like maybe now in the middle school or upper school English class, Sarah's middle school or upper school English class?
So I would say, especially early in my career, I felt the sense to keep the status quo of you, especially in the independent school world, you inherit occasionally. You can inherit a course, and the idea is you're just going to run that thing as it was, and you can change things, you can throw your own spin on it, but you're mostly doing the same thing. Again, with that personal connection, sometimes schools can have that deep connection with what's happening, and for good reason. There's often signature programs. So I would say, though, my first couple of years, I was intimidated to change things because it's kind of the way that they'd always been. But after learning about the different research informed practices, I realized I don't need to give homework every single night if it's not priming my students for what we're doing the next day, if it's not a practice for what we've been learning on their own and we're going to review it, or preparing them in some way. And if I'm giving homework, I want it to be something that I'm dedicating class time to as well. So that was a shift of it's not just something you go do in a silo and then we don't look at again and I grade without you there. It's much more of how is what I'm asking you to do before you come to class going to prepare you to get the most out of class.
I'm assuming a very common English assignment is around reading at night, right? And then there's so much discussion about reading going on, and we know reading and writing, oracy, literacy is really important. But then you wrote later in your article towards the end, sometimes we'll get the question as teachers from our lovely students like, why do I have to do this? So let's talk about how would you let's just take a somewhat what we call a traditional, but a very much needed. Hey, you have to read the next chapter of name the Gatsby, right? I think some of our students just read or Hamlet or Their Eyes Were Watching God, whatever we're reading now. How do you sort of convey the purpose of an assignment when you get that question of why do I have to do this?
Yeah, so I would say on a very basic level with the why do I have to do this reading for homework tonight is so that you can come to class and get something out of it. It's not a waste.
Fair
It's not
enough.
a
Like,
waste of your time. So
yeah,
there's a very simple logistical response to that, and for some students that is that's the starting point, and then the conversation continues to be, well, why are we looking at X, Y, or Z? And so let's say, why are we looking at this theme about coping mechanisms? We were just reading Marrow Thieves in ninth grade. They just finished it. So why are we looking at the theme of coping mechanisms? Because one, not all coping mechanisms are healthy, and some look very different based on the person. So it's a universal human experience. And I think English, and I know you feel this way probably about history, something we can fall back upon really easily is that it's about humanity and it's about how to be a person, but it's also about how to think about things. And I'm asking you to think about this specific theme or this specific topic. But what I'm really trying to scaffold for you is how do you read something for comprehension, but then also for your own thoughts? How do you engage with the world around you by both digesting what's going on, but also having your own thoughts and critical thinking? So we get the easy answer for that one of why do I have to do this?
right. No, no, no. Absolutely. And I love also in the article. I'm saying love a lot, so I guess I really love this piece. For the audience, You t there were moments in your writing that I felt like you were being informed or your thinking and teaching was transformed by some of the MBE research you were reading. But then there was a moment where I think your thinking was validated. You said, "One of my personal convictions of teaching that withstood investigation in the MBE mirror was my commitment to partnerships." And from my observations and our conversations, that you are a highly relational teacher, highly like connected with your student teacher. And I think you see that as a partnership. Can you explain that a little more? Like, first of all, how did it feel to see research that validated your this commitment to partnership is my first question. I do have a follow-up.
Okay. I will say it was I think it was a relief because I felt on some instinctual level that this is right. They can't, and from my own experiences as a learner, but also from just as the world evolves, the idea that there's just one person in the room who regurgitates information to you and you memorize it and now you know it. It doesn't work. It needs to be a space in which students can ask follow-up questions. They can say, I don't understand. And I don't know about you when you were a learner, but it was pretty hard for me to say I don't understand to the teacher in the room, especially if I didn't have a relationship with them. And so that relationship then looks like in the classroom kind of I'm spending time getting to know them. I'm asking them since we're going to spring break, "Hey, what are you looking forward to over spring break?" And a lot of the time the answer is sleeping,
Right, yeah.
which gives me a little bit of feedback about how well they're doing during the week with managing their time. But it lets them know that I do care so that when they come to office hours and they're actually asking for that assistance on something that has higher stakes, let's say an assignment that's graded, they know on a base level that I do care about them or at least I'm hoping to establish relationships, so that's the base level.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I got to this idea that relationships, connections are pedagogical strategy,
Mm.
truly. And the other way, I think I probably when I started teaching, it was like I teach, they learn, open your brain, I'm gonna throw history in it, shut it, go learn it, right? And but I think you're right. I mean, if we can these connections, these partnerships, these relationships are sort of conditions for the learning we want. You have a couple of different lives here at St. Andrews, like all independent school teachers. I think are you in your second, third year of co-leading the new employee orientation program?
I think honestly the years blend together, Glenn. No, I think it's
I
the
had two
second
in the
year.
brain, but I might round it up to three-ish. I don't think that's rounding up math teachers. Just want to go on record.
I think it's second, and then there's the overlap of I was mentor for years before that, and we're all very collaborative here.
So, now you're in a little different spot, right? You are now the widely veteran of St. Andrews, right? You're almost double digits, like getting there, being here, and that kind of. What's it like as you work, coach, mentor new teachers to our school? They might not be new teachers to teaching. We know that, and most of them probably have light or little extra to MBE before they got here. But how do you approach that group? And I know they do read NeuroTeach over the summer, but how are you thinking now about coaching and mentoring that group into the MBE space so they don't have something stuck in their teeth?
So for context, it's a 2-year program. And the first year, we're constantly seeking feedback from our participants in this program, aka for our newest employees. And we're asking them, how did this go? How was this breakout during the half day? And we're focusing on that first year of just making sure that they can kind of get their bearings. It's a little bit like freshman year. Even if you came from our middle school here, there's a little bit of a learning curve. So kind of extending that even if you know what you're doing as far as teaching goes, being in a new community, you need to know how the printer works. You need to know who to go to for questions and things like that. But when we're also in faculty meetings and we're talking about strategies for students, you hear these words flying around all the time. And we wanted to establish a culture of general baseline knowledge of what are these words that we're using? Why are we saying yet so much? Or why are we talking about their behaviors as opposed to them as individuals and labeling them? And while that's not unique to St. Andrews alone, it is something that we really emphasize in that first series of meetings in August. So bringing them in and kind of giving them a baseline of culture for St. Andrews so that then that second year they are primed for a deeper exploration of that, whether that's through NeuroTeach Global and I should say, are teaching all kinds of minds training before they come in for that second year. And whether that's a refresher or a first time around, it's great and leads them well into the summer academy for the end of their second year.
Is it how does it feel for you to be playing this sort of coaching and mentoring role? again, they might have experience in the classroom, but really around our culture, or truly, as some of the audience might know, right? If you go to our website, it says 100% of our teachers are research informed, preschool through 12th grade. And what that means is, as you just said, we provide them every year they're here a level of training in mind brain education. But what's that coaching, mentoring? I know you've done some training in this work in general been like that to get teachers to be their best for our students?
So I would say that I'm going to fall back on one of my teaching
Why not?
elements
That's
here
what you know best, probably.
is that it's relational. And we spend so much of that time, the month of August and September, making sure that new employees know who to go to and have a person. And if it's not their mentor, introducing them to somebody that could be their person, so that when coaching needs to happen, or when you can have a gentle kind of an opening the door to a question or to further exploration, if we're getting there before maybe the scaffolded structure of teaching all kind of minds in the summer, it's it's not as personal as it can feel when somebody's asking you to change your practice, and people are open to that change.
Makes sense. Now, you had a word in the article that I love seeing that I think teachers would agree with, but they often don't admit to. The sentence is, I found that my favorite aspects of teaching were actually the strategies that withstood the investigation. And a lot of what I dreaded doing could be purged. The word purged is again, it's I think sometimes feel like if they use that word, they're admitting they feel defeatist. But there are things probably maybe it's time for us to purge, or the research would suggest they're not the best strategies. Is there anything like, hey, you've really either done less, or maybe even ultimately have purged from your practice based upon looking at some of these research informed practices and sort of some of the promising strategies that are out there?
Yeah, and actually hearing you say purge now out loud a couple of times, no, it's evoking a different image than in my brain, but I think pruning maybe is even a better way to talk
Now you're
about it.
showing off,
I'm
using a
showing
little
off.
of the neuroanatomy. I love you use of pruning.
And I'm thinking about what is it that I pruned so that I could do something else better, or do something with better student success. And one of those things is the type of feedback that I give. So it's incredibly cognitively overwhelming to get a piece of paper back and have just it covered, whether that's with red or green or purple. There was a
So I
wild,
do have to ask, what color pen do you use?
so mostly green.
Okay.
But honestly, we're doing a lot on Canvas these days
All
so
right.
that it gets to them faster. But I will say the focused feedback. So if we're working on passage analysis, I'm going to talk about, for the first couple of times, I want to see quote integration. That's first trimester. How well did you choose your quote? Did you integrate it? Is it connected? And obviously the feedback that's related to that needs to be on the page. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to go through for every single thing. And that can feel I think that helps build a relationship, is that it's not you're waiting for the attack of your of your feedback.
Right, right. Well
The
said.
student's not waiting for that, but instead of they're waiting for almost like a mission check-in of how are we doing with this thing before it really counts.
Yeah. No, I loved the question about the pen. For some reason, I was given, when I first started teaching, like a box of red pens. And I didn't know who made red the official pen of grading. It looks like the Battle of the Marne happened on some of these papers. There's so much red. So I am with you. Teaching is really hard. We're working with the most complex organ of the body. Our days, it's to create good lessons and work with the diversity that exists, of both ideas and experiences and prior knowledge and learning that we have. It's really a challenging thing, but it's really important for us to keep growing. And I think you model that so well here. And I like you just sort of talked about it. I really think part of your ethos and what makes you so great as an educator is your own growth mindset. How are you able to maintain it amidst some of the highs and lows, right? I'm not going to ask you to read a book for tomorrow because we're on vacation tomorrow. I get it. But I think you really model in an important way this idea of I'm going to try to keep getting better. And part of that's going to be using research. How are you able to sustain that in the challenging career we have chosen?
So I swear, for everyone listening, Glenn did not know this in advance, but we the English department, there are a couple of us who are doing the Making Thinking Visible.
I actually I just got an email about
Oh,
that
you did?
today. No,
Okay.
today though. So
Okay.
no, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And that was the mindset of the campus, the school that we exist in, is that we're gonna grow, we're gonna learn, we're gonna get better. Whether that is your first year here, your 36th year here, everyone's going to get a little bit better. We talk about that, like 1% better every day.
Yeah.
And so it was a colleague who found this course. She needed a teammate or team members, and truly just turned around in the department and said, anyone interested in this? And the response was immediate, where a couple people said, yes, absolutely. We looked at the timeline. People were maybe not.
Fair.
But it's been really great. And so that sense of collegiality in the pursuit of becoming better is, I think, one of the motivations to keep that up
No,
when it's
a great.
exhausting.
No, it's a great story. But having an accountability partner. I remember when I trained for the Boston Marathon, like there was no way I was doing less. There was like 14 of us training, so there was not a day that at least two people didn't want to run, right? And they pulled the others. They pulled the others along, and certainly looking at visible thinking and visible thinking routines is an area of both. It'd be good to look at the research as well as sort of what are those routines that, again, is a way to engage kids, see what they're thinking, also in multiple modality ways, which I love. When's that start for you guys after the break? I'm assuming.
Oh, we've started.
Oh, you started.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're in session 3.
Okay.
And I would say also our students have trust in us. And so when I ask them, hey guys, I'm doing this thing and I'm explaining the why behind, we're going to fill out this understanding map. And I truly just want you to tell me what you were thinking or what your thinking might look like on this page in whatever way. There's not a trap. It's not a trick. Your name's not associated with this. I just want to know. They do it, and they're honest about it. And I think that that's, again, we're modeling the growth that we're hoping to see with them. And the more I get to talk about it, the better.
Right. And the understanding map was one of the routines.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was one of our first.
No, I love that you were very transparent. Look, you're a professional. You know your subject well, but you're also modeling for your kids. I remember actually. I love what you've just said. In 1997, I think is when I interviewed for my job here. And there's a guy named John Holden who you might have just came after John, I think, right? Or were you here when John was here? Okay. John was either the upper school head or the assistant head of school. And the one thing, when I was looking at St. Andrews in another school, he said that I always remember, and every candidate I interview, I say, I plagiarize. And I know I'm speaking to an English teacher, so I'm just going to say, audience, I do plagiarize. John, he ended with, I said, what do you expect from me to work here? And he said, I expect that you're better in June than you were in August or September. And there was just something about that. And then I asked him, well, what's that mean? How do you quantify that? He goes, that's up to you. And I just love that sort of mindset. I think you've just, with probably veteran teachers, English teachers, you guys are jumping into this and maybe some newer colleagues. So I think that ethos really does exist at St. Andrews. Now, as we sort of bring this to a close, I'm curious, you read NeuroTeach, you take advantage of the CTTL sort of workshops and experiences, we connect and talk so often. How do you keep sort of your foot on the MBE research-informed gas, so to speak? How do you decide, again, obviously you're looking at visible thinking right now and thinking routines. How do you decide what you might read next, whether it's content or discipline specific, or maybe it's even more of a pedagogical approach?
I tend to start from a question or a reflection of something that's happening in class. And then I've now sort of built out enough of a research base that I know kind of, okay, this person might have written something on this, or I can go look at their works cited. Shout out for not plagiarizing.
Oh, nice. I appreciate
Their
the
works
banter
cited,
there.
and then, do some research of my own, and that way go read that. But there are a couple of I think actually you said it. The ethos of the school is that we're constantly bringing in these ideas, and so during our PDs in the August, we had Alex Quigley here,
Yeah.
and he did a whole series on the reading gap, vocabulary gap, and knowledge gap, and there was something for everybody in that, and it was a topic that the English department was already thinking about
Yeah.
and talking about. So maybe it came in department heads meetings, and that's how Quigley came to be here on campus in August. But it's also, I think the CTTL not to toot your horn too much, but I think the
No, toot.
CTTL
What do you
does a
toot?
great job of keeping the finger on the pulse of what is it the teachers are thinking about and how can you as our research base help us to do better. And I will admit, I go to the CTTL research base webpage
Yep.
a lot
Yeah,
and start from there.
thanks for the shout out. I think it's I want to encourage people. If you go to the cttl.org, we do have a tiered research base that Sarah just alluded to that we continue to shape and grow, and always would love suggestions for resources. We do have a sort of filter. Are you printed, or do you read printed books, or do you are a digital person?
I prefer print because it probably won't be shocking that I scribble all over my books.
Oh, I'm not shocked at all.
However, I have started purchasing, especially for the text that I'm teaching, I've started purchasing the digital and the print so that I can help students find quotes faster with the digital. Because often, we're teaching the skill of annotation and they might have glommed onto something that I didn't annotate, and so I can't find it in my annotations, and I can help them use tools in an intelligent way that is not cheating in any way. That's helping them find a quote that they want to talk about, as opposed to endlessly flipping through pages, losing their main idea. So I've started doing it that way as well.
And I asked that question because there was an old interviewer named Brian Lamb, and he had a TV show. I don't think it was CNN. I can't remember what it was on, called Book Notes. And he would often ask the authors who are writing or the people he was talking to, how do they organize their printed books? So if I was like at your house, like, what's your stack of books look like?
Well, there are several. There's, I will say, in the living room, it's more of an aesthetic design.
Okay.
It's about where did they stack in the vertical color? Does it match? Is the size working?
Fair enough.
But they were all red. And then the bedroom bookcase is a bit more like a library a little bit. It's on topic. So there's a shelf on English literature and composition, things like that. But then there's also my bookshelf of the classics I read and I loved, and my notes are in them, and they're all together. And then there's the candy, the fun, the junk food that still sustains you. It just maybe isn't as sustaining as other things.
Oh, you need the junk
Yeah.
food a little. And you must have a great big MBE research informed stack.
Yes,
somewhere.
those are in I would say those primarily live in my office
I gotcha.
at school, where there's a chunk, including several of the Thinking Deeply and Differently
Well,
volumes.
maybe we'll take a picture. We'll post it online in conjunction with this podcast. I do want to. I do want to say, that I'm not, after reading your article, I'm not embarrassed that along my professional journey, hopefully there's gonna be moments when I have things stuck in my teeth that I just hope people will help me be aware of and help me grow my professional practice where I can brush them out, so to speak. But love your title. I want to encourage anybody who is listening to reach out to the CTTL for a copy of the printed publication, or go to our website where you can read Sarah's article as well as the articles from the first 5 volumes. Sarah, love this time together. Have a great spring break.
Thank you. You too, Glenn.
Awesome. At St. Andrews, we often end our classes with some form of exit ticket or active retrieval of information that was a focal point of the day's class. We know from mind, brain, and education research that if students don't start recalling or using their learning, they are bound to forget it. So in that research-informed spirit, here is your exit ticket from this conversation with Sarah. How might you, wherever you are on your professional journey, explore MBE research and strategies to validate, inform, and transform how you teach and how students learn? Tweet your answers to @thecttl. We look forward to seeing what you come up with. You can learn more about us at thecttl.org, and you can connect with us on X @thecttl, LinkedIn, or Facebook. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a lot of podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review, as this action will help us reach and benefit others like you. Thanks for listening.